Why cooperate when not cooperating often helps you survive? Survival is our goal. Maybe we ought to rape then, because we can propagate our DNA by raping, can't we?
On the atheistic view, there's nothing really wrong with your raping someone.
I think we've all heard apologists say things like, without God you would have no reason not to rape someone, or if evolution is true then morality doesn't matter because all you should care about is your own personal survival and reproduction. There are many ways of phrasing this idea, and many other behaviors that can be inserted, but these examples pretty much sum it up. Now, of course, we have no reason to think statements like these are true, and in many cases, they're obviously untrue. For example, we all know that the theory of evolution doesn't tell us that we shouldn't be moral, any more than the theory of gravity tells us we shouldn't build airplanes. This is because we don't mindlessly pattern our behavior after observations of the physical universe, including our observations about how species survive in wilderness environments. That would be silly. But setting aside willful scientific illiteracy, the foundational issue with these statements is that they don't even try to convince anybody about the truth of God's existence. They're just transparent appeals to consequence designed to make people want God to exist, and they do so in a pretty formulaic way. They begin by getting us to imagine a world without God. This is done explicitly in the first statement, and in the second, the word evolution is used to imply a godless universe. Next, they claim that a bad behavior would be permissible, or that a good behavior would be unnecessary if God did not exist. Finally, and this is the ultimate goal, they suggest a consequence of the aforementioned behaviors. So let's see how our first example fits this formula. It states that without God, you'd have no reason not to rape someone. Or to phrase the same idea more directly, rape would be permissible. The consequence, of course, is that we'd have to worry about everybody running around raping each other. And we all know that would be horrible. Now in this example, as is often the case, the consequence was not stated. It was just implied. And it seems apologists usually like to plant the idea in people's minds without being so crass as to come out and say it. But let's make no mistake. Stated or not, it is part of the argument. And in fact, it's the main conclusion the apologist intends to lead you to. Right? I mean, he'll usually move on to another formally stated position, but will anybody argue that this isn't the effect he's going for? After all, what's an appeal to consequence without a consequence? I think we all get the form of manipulation being employed here. An apologist will always pick rape, or a similar crime, because he knows that practically any audience will find it appalling. He uses it to tap into their sense of revulsion, and to suggest the perils of a world in which everybody went around freely raping each other. A world in which the structure of society has broken down, leaving us and our loved ones to live in constant danger. The apologist knows that nobody wins in this scenario, because even if somebody in the audience was deranged enough to rape at the first opportunity, he would probably fear such anarchy as much as the next person. Thus his suggestion is that avoiding this state of affairs is good reason to prohibit this behavior. Thus, to avoid this behavior, we're going to want to believe in God, since without him there's no reason to... Wait a minute. If this is good reason to avoid this, then how is God the only reason? I think we've just caught the apologist double dipping. On one hand, he uses one reason not to rape to build his premise, but then he uses a second reason to build his final appeal to the audience. But if the second one is also a good reason, then the first one isn't the only one, is it? In fact, the first one isn't really a reason at all. And to show why, let's take a look at an analogous statement, which is, without parents, there would be no reason for kids not to play in traffic, with the implication being that this is bad because kids would then all go out and get hit by cars. You see, anybody who thinks parents are the reason for not playing in traffic totally fails to grasp the point. The fact that kids would get hit by cars is the reason not to play in traffic. Parents are just a necessary source of supervision for children who haven't yet figured out that they shouldn't do so. In the same way, God is not the reason for not raping. This is the reason for not raping. God is just a proposed source of supervision postulated by people who think we can't figure out for ourselves that rape is bad. Each of these examples has a behavior, a reason for not doing that behavior, and a source of supervision. By confusing the supervision for the ultimate reason you shouldn't perform the act, apologists are hoping to mislead you. By trying to scare you with the real reason, they're contradicting themselves. Leave it to apologists to so clearly refute their own argument.